huge. Extremely large in size or amount, grade and degree. For example, the sums of money involved are potentially huge.
Hunger. The state of not having enough food to eat, especially when this causes illness or death. For example, around 50 people die of hunger every day in the camp.
Hungry.
Hungry. Feeling that you want to eat something. For example, I'm really hungry.
Hunt. To go after wild animals in order to catch or kill them for food, sport, or to make money. For example, lions sometimes hunt alone.
Hunting.
Hunting. Going after and killing wild animals as a sport or for food. For example, he goes hunting every weekend.
Ice cream. A type of sweet frozen food made from milk fat, tasting of fruit, chocolate, etc., and often eaten as a dessert. A small amount of this food intended for one person, often served in a container made of biscuit that is like a cone in shape. For example, desserts are served with cream or ice cream.
Imagination. The ability to create pictures in your mind, the part of your mind that does this. For example, a vivid, fertile imagination.
Immense. Extremely large or great. For example, there is still an immense amount of work to be done.
Important.
Important. Having a great effect on people or things, of great value. For example, an important issue/question/point/factor.
Increase.
Increase. A rise in the amount, number, or value of something. For example, price a tax or wage increases.
Ingredient. One of the things from which something is made, especially one of the foods that are used together to make a particular dish. For example, mix all the ingredients in a bowl.
Injustice. The fact of a situation being unfair and of people not being treated equally, an unfair act or an example of unfair treatment. For example, we are committed to fighting against poverty and injustice.
Instead. In the place of somebody/something. For example, Lee was ill so I went instead. Instructor. A person whose job is to teach somebody a practical skill or sport. For example, a fitness/driving/ski instructor. Intake. The amount of food, drink, etc. that you take into your body. For example, high fluid intake.
Intense. Very great, very strong. For example, we were all suffering in the intense heat.
Iron. A chemical element. Iron is a hard, strong metal that is used to make steel and is also found in small quantities in blood and food. For example, iron gates, bars, railings.
Jam. A thick sweet substance made by boiling fruit with sugar, often sold in jars and spread on bread. For example, strawberry jam. Jazz. A type of music with strong rhythms, in which the players often improvise, equals make up the music as they are playing, originally created by African American musicians at the beginning of the 20th century. For example, traditional or modern jazz.
Juice.
Juice. The liquid that comes from fruit or vegetables, a drink made from this. For example, a glass of fruit juice.
Justice. The fair treatment of people. For example, she spent her life fighting for social justice and equality for women.
Kitchen.
Kitchen. a room in which meals are cooked or prepared. For example, we ate at the kitchen table.
Largely.
Largely. To a great extent, mostly or mainly. For example, the manager was largely responsible for the team's victory.
Lemon.
Lemon. A yellow citrus fruit with juice that has a bitter, sharp taste. Slices of lemon and lemon juice are used in cooking and drinks. For example, add a squeeze of lemon juice.
Lesser. Not as great in size, amount, or importance as somebody else. For example, people of lesser importance.
Lethal. Causing or able to cause death. For example, she had been given a lethal dose of poison.
Limit.
Limit. The greatest or smallest amount of something that is allowed. For example, they imposed a strict spending limit.
Limited.
Limited. Not very great in amount or extent. For example, we are doing our best with the limited resources available. Long. For a long time. For example, have you been here long?
Lot. A large number or amount. For example, how many do you need? A lot.
Lunch. A meal eaten in the middle of the day. For example, she's gone to lunch.
Lung. Either of the two organs in the chest that you use for breathing. For example, her father died of lung cancer.
Luxury. Expensive and of very high quality. For example, a luxury hotel/car/apartment.
Machine. A piece of equipment with many parts that work together to do a particular task. The power used to work a machine may be electricity, steam, gas, etc., or human power. For example, machines have replaced human labor in many industries. Magnitude. The great size or importance of something, the degree to which something is large or important. For example, we did not realize the magnitude of the problem.
Make. The name or type of a machine, piece of equipment, etc. that is made by a particular company. For example, make of something.
Mall. A large building or covered area that has many shops, restaurants, etc. inside it. For example, let's go to the mall.
Manage.
Manage. To control or be in charge of a business, a team, an organization, land, etc. For example, to manage a business, factory, bank, hotel, soccer team. Manipulate. To control or influence somebody, something, often in a dishonest way so that they do not realize it. For example, manipulate somebody, something.
Manipulation. Behavior that controls or influences somebody/something, often in a dishonest way so that they do not realize it. For example, advertising like this is a cynical manipulation of the elderly.
Maximum.
Maximum. The greatest amount, size, speed, etc. that is possible, recorded or allowed. For example, a maximum of 30 children in a class.
Meal. An occasion when people eat food, especially breakfast, lunch, or dinner. For example, try not to eat between meals.
Meat. The soft part of an animal or a bird that can be eaten as food, a particular type of this. For example, a piece, slice of meat.
Melt. To become or make something become liquid as a result of heating. For example, the snow showed no sign of melting.
Menu. A list of the food that is available at a restaurant or to be served at a meal. For example, may we have the menu?
Metal. A type of solid mineral substance that is usually hard and shiny and that heat and electricity can travel through, for example tin, iron and gold. For example, a piece/sheet of metal. Milk. The white liquid produced by cows, goats, and some other animals as food for their young and used as a drink by humans. For example, a pint/liter of milk.
Mineral. A substance that is naturally present in the earth and is not formed from animal or vegetable matter, for example gold and salt. Some minerals are also present in food and drink and in the human body and are essential for good health. For example, a country rich in mineral resources.
Misery. Great physical or mental pain. For example, fame brought her nothing but misery.
Model.
Model. A copy of something, usually smaller than the original object. For example, a working model equals one in which the parts move of a fire engine.
Monster.
Monster. In stories, an imaginary creature that is very large, ugly and frightening. For example, a monster with 3 heads.
Mouse. A small animal that is covered in fur and has a long thin tail. Mice live in fields, in people's houses or where food is stored. For example, a house mouse.
Movie. A series of moving pictures recorded with sound that tells a story, watched at a movie theater, or on a television or other device. For example, you'll love this movie.
Much. Used with uncountable nouns, especially in negative sentences to mean a large amount of something, or after how to ask about the amount of something. It is also used with as, so and to. For example, I don't have much money with me.
Neat. Tidy and in order, carefully done or arranged. For example, she kept her desk extremely neat. Nut. A small hard fruit with a very hard shell that grows on some trees. For example, to crack a nut equals open it.
Nutrition. The process by which living things receive the food necessary for them to grow and be healthy. For example, advice on diet and nutrition.
Onion.
Onion. A round vegetable with many layers inside each other and a brown, red or white skin. Onions have a strong smell and taste. For example, chop the onions finely.
Order.
Order. The way in which people or things are placed or arranged in relation to each other. For example, in order.
Oven. The part of a cooker that is like a box with a door on the front, in which food is cooked or heated. For example, take the cake out of the oven.